Welcome to Inner Peace Better Health, a space where insights meet transformation. I am Sayan, and you have ever felt like you're scrambling for clarity, trying to be the quiet, or longing to uncover deeper meaning? This one's for you. Today, we are joined by Dr. Claudia Six, who is a PhD, a board-certified clinical therapist, researcher, author, and two-time TEDx speaker with over 30 years of experience helping individuals and couples cultivate emotional resilience, authenticity, and inner balance. Claudia's work bridges psychology and self-discovery, blending science with compassion to help people move beyond survival and step into a life of genuine peace and purpose. Tonight, we explore the pathways to inner peace, healing, and personal growth, on how to process certain emotions, nurture self-awareness, and build habits that bring calm even when the life feels chaotic. So, if you're listening and thinking, I want more than surface calm, I want rooted peace, this conversation's for you. So sit tight. So, welcome to the episode, Dr. Claudia Six. It's an absolute honor to have you here with us.
Thank you, Sayan.
Awesome. So, Dr. Six, I want to crack open the discussion with what initially drew you to study inner peace and human potential at a deep scholarly level, if you may share.
Well, my specialty is relationships and sexuality. So I'm a PhD clinical sexologist. And I years ago realized that this was my calling and that it's an important part of everybody's life, that people think about it or upset about it or wish they were doing it, and that it is critical to human well-being and human happiness, and that it's often fraught with difficulty. And so I decided to study it thoroughly, and I got a master's degree in psychology, and then I got a PhD in clinical sexology. And for the last 35 years, I've been working with clients to improve their relationships.
Wow, awesome. And were there any personal experiences that shaped your focus in this field?
Well, yes. When I was a child, I grew up in France, in Paris, France.
Okay.
So even though I live in California, I don't have the American mindset. So when I was a child, my parents decided to wait until I asked questions about sexuality. And apparently I asked questions at a very young age, because by the time I was 5, I had all the information. And as a teenager, I was the one my friends came to for advice and information. So even though I was a late bloomer myself, I was the one giving advice and saying, don't do anything you don't want to do. Don't do anything that doesn't feel right. Make sure it's not just about him. Make sure you're giving pleasure. Set boundaries, be true to yourself. And then same thing in college. I had friends who were having a hard time, and I was the one giving advice. And so I decided to make it my career.
Wow, that's compelling. How personally how personal curiosity and lived experience often fuel transformative research. And speaking of transformation, Dr. Six, in your work, what do you find are the most overlooked factors that impact emotional and mental well-being of a person?
Connection, presence. People are not present with themselves, and so they can be present with their partner. And we are not trained to be present. We are not taught to be present. We are taught to shut a lot down in order to conform to what is acceptable in the predominant culture. And so people lose, young children have this. Young children are very present. But people lose the ability to be present with themselves. And so they can't be present with a beloved, and they can't connect. That is what it all comes down to, is presence and connection.
Wow, that's insightful. And how does one actually do that? Like you said, being in the present. I wanna know more about it. Like, what should a person do to be in the present so that his or her partner feels love it? What is that?
Well, first you have to be present with yourself. And obviously, yoga and meditation, are good ways to get to that. Meditation can be many things. Meditation can be exercise. I mean, I swim. Swimming is meditation for me. It's taking time to be alone with yourself and with your thoughts without distractions, without devices, without distracting, without numbing. Whether it's with, in America, people numb themselves a lot with alcohol or pot or food
Right.
or shopping, and they can't tolerate just being quiet with themselves without any distractions. Because when you do that, you might feel uncomfortable feelings, and people don't want to be uncomfortable. So you have to be willing to tolerate some uncomfortable feelings and to go through uncomfortable feelings. And then you come out the other side. And then you learn to be more present with yourself. And when you're more present with yourself, you notice a lot more. And when you notice a lot more, you're better able to notice your beloved and what is happening for your beloved. And you're better able to connect with your beloved.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, this is very true. I mean, people take, um, what's the word for it? Like, people take substances, like it could be like alcohol or it could be anything, to numb their pain. So yeah, it just makes a lot more sense that I think feeling that raw emotion in itself is a very beautiful thing, and that helps you realize, okay, who you really are. And again, that's very insightful, as in sometimes the smallest and unseen elements create the biggest shifts. And I love that you mentioned about that, because that ties into something I've been thinking about. For example, how we bridge awareness with action. It's one thing to know what helps us grow, but another to actually live it every day. So, Dr. Six, how do you integrate scientific research with practical approaches for personal growth and self care?
Scientific research in my field these days is all about rewiring the brain and neuroplasticity. And
Wow.
frankly, a lot of it is just common sense. So, for example, if you're not experiencing success because you're having a lot of negative thoughts in anticipation of an event or a circumstance, neuroplasticity and rewiring the brain is you have to change these negative thoughts to positive thoughts. And it sounds very simple. And frankly, it is very simple. It's really common sense. And so once you change your brain to positive thoughts, you are better able to set yourself up for success, and you're better able to experience positive results.
Wow, that balance is powerful. Like you said, bridging theory with practice makes wellness actionable and sustainable. And what role, Dr. Six, if I may ask, does the mindset play in achieving that? You said about being an optimist. That helps you achieve that state of well-being, right? So, what role do you think the mindset does play?
I think it plays a huge role. It's probably, I mean, in the field of, sexology, they say your biggest sex organ is your brain. And so
Right.
whether it's in sexual relationships or romantic relationships or just relationship with yourself, what goes on in your head is what has the most impact on the life that you lead. If you have positive thoughts, if you are comfortable with yourself, if you are present with yourself and you're connected to yourself, you're going to experience a lot more, inner peace and much more of a healthy mind, as is the title of your podcast.
Right. And Dr. Six, like, for example, since we are talking about relationships in general, I want to understand that, and I think a lot of people listening to us right now would also love to know that what should you do as an individual when you feel that the intimacy between you and your partner isn't there anymore? I mean, it's kind of a feeling like being stuck. Um, so how should you or how do you navigate through that, you know, emotion of it could be like uh, loneliness, it could be of, if I phrase it this way, it could also be lack of intimacy, but yeah, that's what the question is about, really.
I would say the short answer is get help. Ask for help. Ask an expert for help, because the reasons why couples pick each other makes perfect sense. But it also becomes the reasons why couples get stuck. It always makes perfect sense. When an individual or a couple contacts me because of difficulties in their sex life or in their romantic relationship, the first thing I do is try and figure out, how does it make perfect sense? Because I operate on the premise that nobody is broken and nobody needs to be fixed and nobody's the bad guy. It's always about the dynamic between two people. And so I
Right.
look at people's family history, relationship history, sexual history, um, and from that I kind of get a sense of what is somebody's emotional fingerprint, like how they're put together emotionally. Who is this person? And then that gives me a sense of faulty beliefs that they might have about themselves, like, I'm not lovable, I'm not heard, I don't have a voice, there's no room for my needs, stuff like that. We all have something like that, going on,
Right.
everybody. And ineffective behaviors, ways that they go about do things that don't serve them. Sometimes there's trauma. Trauma isn't necessarily bad things that happen to you. Sometimes it's good
Right.
things that should have happened but didn't. And
Right.
communication, often couples don't communicate. If they communicate, we're always communicating. It's just that people often don't like the communication that they're getting. So I help people communicate effectively. So that's, that's sort of it's a big question you're asking me. So I'm giving you a short, condensed answer to how to address this when people are struggling. And there's no shame. I mean, a lot of people struggle in relationship. It's, I don't like the word normal, but it is very common for people to struggle in relationships at some point and in intimacy.
That's very relevant. That small intentional shifts in thinking can ripple outward into meaningful life changes. And Dr. Sis, you just talked about, seeking help. And just after that, you also talked about effective communication. So, for listeners listening to this right now and seeking immediate guidance, what's one step they can take today to move closer to that clarity, balance, inner peace? So this question is not just from um, the relationship perspective, so to say, or I would like to have this question, or I would like to generalize this question to anything that people think they're struggling with in their personal lives. So is the answer to this just effective communication, or is there more to it? And what's that one immediate thing that you would recommend people to do right away?
I would say open your mouth, talk about it, because often people censor themselves. Either they have shame or they think they're supposed to be a certain way. A lot of suffering comes from people trying to be the way they think they're supposed to be. So I just say, open your mouth, say what's true, make it about you. This is what's happening for me, and just say it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can clean it up later, but just don't keep it in, because once you say something that's true for you, once you put it on the table, it actually has a lot less charge. it kind of helps to see it more clearly, and it also helps you get support.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was empowering. I mean, um, practical steps grounded in awareness turn intention into real measurable growth. I get that, and it was actually a very insightful conversation with you, Dr. Six. And for all the listeners listening to this right now, what's and curious to reach out to you, what's one way that they can do so?
To reach out to me,
Yes.
you can go online. My website is dr6dsix.net. So if you go to drsix.net, you can find my blog posts. I also have a chat bot, which is it's listed in the blog posts, and you can ask questions there, and you can book me for a free consultation. But there's a lot of information on the website. There's a lot of articles I've written. I'm on a lot of social media. So there's a lot of information available for people.
Perfect. Dear listeners, I will have these details in the show notes for you so you can check them out anytime at your own convenience. And with that, unfortunately, we come to an end to today's episode. But with that, Dr. Claudia Six reminds us that inner peace isn't some distant dream, but a daily practice built on awareness, compassion, and small intentional choices. I am Sayan, and you have been listening to Inner Peace, Better Health. If today's episode spoke to you, take a quiet moment tonight. Breathe, reflect, and ground yourself in presence. Here are a few simple takeaways you can start with. Pause before reacting. Give your emotions space to speak before you respond. Next, journal one small gratitude or realization from your day, because clarity begins with noticing. And last, set one gentle boundary that protects your peace, because balance often begins with saying no. These aren't any grand gestures, but daily reminders that healing happens in motion. So, until next time, take care of your mind, nurture your spirit, and remember, peace isn't found, it's practiced.